straight, eh?
Hello, welcome everybody. SF Live episode 237. It is Monday. Welcome everybody. Hope everybody had a great weekend. We already did a breaking news special with Dory Copper this morning. Now it's time for a long form interview, and I have a guest here in the studio with me. I'm quite excited about that because, as you know, we try to emulate the live conference environment, and we try to get the CEOs on camera, live, unedited, and unfiltered. So I'm really happy to be doing more of these lately, and we had like 3 or 4 last week, which was fantastic. And now I have Richard here with me. Well, he's the interim CEO of Element 29 Resources, and we're going to find out more about why interim and is interim turning permanent. But also, we named the video Under the Radar Copper Stock. I went on co.ca and saw 0 posts on it. So that's why Under the Radar. Quite excited to learn more about it. I first heard about it in May 2019, and I'm going to give some reasons or why I heard about it and what did I do with it and what did I do when I heard about it as well. But before we switch over to the conversation with our guest here, be reminded to follow us on YouTube, follow us on Twitter, hit the like and subscribe button. It helps tremendously with the algorithm, so please do that. And if you are a shareholder, obviously more investors like yourself will see the video on YouTube. Well, make sure to do that, and it's highly, highly appreciated. Now, let me switch over. You've already seen my guest. Here he is. And Richard, it's great to have you on. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Kai. It's good to be doing this live. First one, actually.
Absolutely. I have to admit, I wasn't prepared for it this morning, and all of a sudden you were standing in the hallway. I was like, yes, it's in person, not via Zoom. So I had to take the screen down and everything. So it's really refreshing, and I'm really excited to see more CEOs come in the studio in person. It makes a big difference.
Yeah, it feels like we're getting back to normal.
Slowly but surely, right? I think mid-February, in 10 days, we'll have another announcement and see what the restrictions are, I think. So we'll see. Fingers crossed for Freedom Day. Freedom Day.
Freedom Day.
That's what they call it in Europe, at least. But so far, so good. Richard, it's your first time on SF Live.
It is.
And it's great to have you on. But give us a quick 30, 60-second pitch on Element 29 Resources, and then we'll dive into more of the details, specifics, why interim, and all that good stuff.
Okay. Well, Element 29 is a copper-focused junior resource company. Listed with projects in Peru, copper projects, and we're listed on the TSX Venture Exchange, as well as the OTCQB in the US, where we also have DTC eligibility, which I think makes it easier to trade our shares in the US. We're also listed on the Frankfurt Exchange.
Fantastic. Okay. Run us a bit through the history of the company, because you've been involved in the founding group, Club Trotters, sort of discovered the project. So give us a bit of a rundown, because I first heard about it in May 2019.
Right.
Is that when it all started?
Getting close. I mean, we spent about 7 years building that portfolio in Peru, our copper portfolio, and it takes about a mine cycle, really, like 7 to 8, 10 years to build a portfolio like this. When a lot of the big mining companies were dropping ground in some prime real estate in Peru, we were actually acquiring it back in 2015. And that time when copper was around $2 a pound kind of thing, or just above that. So it made it, put us in a position where we got to a point where we had made a new discovery called Elida, and we had acquired a project from a small-scale mining company down there called Minera Candelaria. And once we had those assets, we just felt that it would generate more value if we put those into a new copper-focused junior versus trying to do a deal with the majors at the time. The majors weren't really doing a lot of work. I think they're still trying to clean up their balance sheets and things like that. So we had been sort of watching the markets, and we could sort of see that a lot of juniors were getting a fair bit of traction if they had good copper stories.
One of the projects you mentioned was from Lundin Mining, right? Did you buy it outright from them, or did they drop it and then you acquired it? Or how did that work out?
Yeah, no, that's our Elida project. It was actually discovered by us, Globe Trotters, and we optioned it to Lundin back in 2013, I think. And they drilled about 10,000 meters back in 14 and 15. Then, as I mentioned, the price of copper went to like $2 a pound, and I think Lundin had just acquired some assets in Chile and a nickel project in Michigan, and they're looking at. They figured they could get into projects, I think, with less risk, and I think they cut back on a lot of their greenfields exploration, and they end up giving the project back to Globe Trotters. I really think that was the time when we thought it might be better just to move that project into a sort of a junior resource company.
Okay, yeah. That makes a lot of sense, actually. 'Cause you have consolidated focus, you can drill it, and you get operatorship on it as well. Like oftentimes with bigger companies, they just projects drop on the wayside. You never hear from them. They only spend the minimum amount on it.
No, I mean they had some great results. It was quite surprising they actually gave it back. But anyway, we're pretty happy to get it back.
Nothing wrong with that.
No,
Makes you look better,
absolutely.
right? So fantastic. Let's talk about lots to talk about actually, but let's talk about you first because your title, that's the first thing I stuck with me, is that you're interim CEO. You're also chairman. Give us a bit of background. How did it come to that? And is interim going to be permanent, or what's the strategy there?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was part of founding the company, of course, and I've been involved in developing the projects, so it was pretty logical transition, I think. But what had happened was our CEO that we had hired to take on the projects in the company, Brian Booth, actually had some health issues back in 2019, so he had a bit of a change of life experience and decided it was time to retire. So we decided that it would be probably best for me to step in and take over that CEO role until we could find someone. And that started back in October of last year, so we've been into it now 5 months.
Oh, okay. So still fairly fresh. So you're not planning on being interim CEO for the next 12 years or so?
No, we're actively looking. We have recruiters out, looking for people, and what we want to be is not in a hurry. We want to find the right person.
Yeah, fantastic.
Right.
Fantastic. Okay, so Club Trotters.
Yes.
You brought it up. You're a founder of Club Trotters. You're a member of Club Trotters. Mm-hmm. Who is Club Trotters? I know actually Club Trotters in Germany is a big outdoor apparel brand and an outdoor clothing store. So I'm sure it has nothing to do with that.
No, it doesn't. It's also like a trucking company.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So there's a few things, but it's a company that I founded with a couple of other people. David Elliott, who's a big part of it. Brian Abraham, Manuel Montoya, who's our VP of Exploration in Peru. He used to be with Tech for quite a long time, and he resigned from Tech to join Globetrotters. But we've been active since about 2010, 2011, and we are still private, sort of partially self-funding, and by generating revenue through our projects, kind of thing, right? But Element 29 sort of came about. We took two of our most advanced projects as well as two earlier stage to put together a pipeline, and that's where we felt that could give Element 29 quite a good portfolio to be able to move into the markets with.
Where does the operatorship of the projects then lie? Is that it's still with Globetrotters? Is Globetrotters running sort of the exploration programs on behalf of Element 29, or is it all within the company itself?
All within the company. We brought in, that's a good point actually, we brought in Paul Johnson. Paul is our VP of Exploration with Element 29, and he was actually hired by Globetrotters initially until Element 29 got off the ground for the purpose of putting him on as VP of Exploration for Element 29. And Paul is actually quite interesting background. He's got about 15 years working with Tech Resources, Tech I think now. But he basically was the senior chief geologist with regional chief geologist for Tech and for all of South America. He spent about 5 or 6 years working in Chile and Peru. And, we just consider Paul a porphyry expert, right? So he's doing a fantastic job in running the programs right now.
Fantastic. Before we dive into the exploration side of things and talk about more in detail about the projects, let's catch up on the capital structure real quick. Sure. 45 million market cap at today's share price, 57 cents roughly. 80 million shares outstanding, roughly 18 million warrants and options. Mostly warrants though, like 16 million roughly. Do you know the strike prices? Like, do you have an overview? Yeah,
well, there's a fair bit of 50 cents. Like every time we do a financing, you have to put out a warrant these days, and I don't know, it's sort of good and bad, right? So we have a bunch from the IPO that are sort of have a strike price of about 70 cents, and then we also have another group that we just did through the financing we did in the fall. They have a strike price of cents, and they're all 3-year warrants. I think there's a few left over from an earlier placement where we have some. Well, not a lot of those.
Yeah. Cash on hand, how much?
7.9 million.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, well positioned there. Run us through share ownership a bit, because Globetrotters still owns 14%. And when I looked at it in 2019, it was actually, and that was the main reason I passed on it back in the day, it was 40% ownership. That was personally for my personal taste. Like everybody's got different criteria, just a tad much, because I didn't know where to put it, right? And how to, like, will it be able to fund it? Are the 40% against me till you get to like 19.9 or so? So of course, knowing is seeing, and seeing and believing and all that stuff. I didn't know much about it. I just saw that big block there.
Yeah, well,
So-
we weren't really planning to hold more than 19.9% of the stock, and we actually sold quite a good chunk to some of our directors in the company and some insiders that were looking to get a block. So we managed to get our position down to, now it's at 14%, like you said, from the last financing. But I think we also did a distribution there where we gave a bunch of shares to Globe Trotter shareholders, which was also, that had significant impact. Brought it down from, it was actually over 50% ownership at one point.
Yeah, it was fairly high back in the day
Yeah.
when I saw it. I actually found the deck just in my Outlook files. So
Did you?
yeah, from back then, it was good to go through it real quick and just refresh my memory a little bit. So,
But we're long-term shareholders.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to be in there for the long term. We put 240,000, I think, into the last one.
oh, that's good to know.
We're gonna continue to support it as best we can, for sure.
Yeah, no, that's important to see and know. Well, you're insiders anyway, so you got to report too. But
Yeah, we reported.
management 7%.
That's
Management
right.
board, yeah.
Yeah.
Polygon is in there. I see RCF is in there.
Yeah.
When did they come in?
They came in quite early. How they got in was through when we first looked at this, we didn't want to dilute too much, so we thought we'd do sort of a convertible debenture back after we did a 30 cent raise, and then get that converted at the IPO level. And so we reached out to a few groups, and RCF agreed to put about $1.5 million in at the time, and then have continued to support the
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, good shareholders to have. They do a lot of technical due diligence as well. So we can put a check mark behind there. I see a couple other names as well, like Commodity Discovery Fund is in, Northfield, Pathfinder.
Mm-hmm.
You've been able to track quite a good roster of shareholders there.
It wasn't all my work, for sure.
Okay, pointed out, you got to deliver though.
Absolutely.
Right? So we got to talk about how you're spending the $7.9 million. Okay. And we actually got some really good news out of Peru this morning. And I saw a press release from Newmont. They're acquiring the 43.65% from Buenaventura of the Yanacocha mine.
I hadn't seen that.
It's like I did the rough math. I wrote it down. So it's roughly a $450 million transaction if you throw in closure costs for Lasagna and Lasagna itself. I don't know how to value that one. So if you add that in there, put a dollar value, it's probably over $500 million worth of value going to Buenaventura. That screams a lot of confidence in Peru.
I would think so.
Because now Newmont has to stem $2.3 billion in capital expenditures this year themselves. So that's also a signal to the market that they might be believing in Peru again. And now I'm going to ask you, is like, how is it working in Peru? How are things? Like, how's the environment? Obviously, big spotlights on the country.
Yeah, I mean, you hear a lot of white noise coming out of Peru on the political side, but I think things are still getting done. We in the last year, we've got 2 permits to do drilling on 2 of our projects. And, if you look at a company like Bear Creek Mining, working in the Corani deposit, which is in southern Peru, they managed to get permits to develop that project, right? If you can get permits there, I think, it sort of shows you that if you do a good job on the community side and social side and, stewards of the environment and work properly and ethically, that you can actually get things done.
Okay. And you said you're fully permitted for your exploration plans right now. Is that
we are? Yeah. Well, I mean, we're still trying to get permitted on one part of the Florida Cobre project. The project itself has 2 porphyry centers, which we're actually drilling Candelaria Center now, which has an historical resource on it. But there's another porphyry center called Atravesado, which we staked contiguous with the Candelaria concessions, which we optioned from a family. That project actually sits on ground that's held by a community, whereas the Candelaria project sits on a ground that's owned by a private company. So we actually made a deal with the private company to go in and we got the the access agreement from them, whereas we're still trying to get access permits for the Atravesado, and the community we're dealing with has been designated indigenous, which means that you have to go through a prior consultation process, which takes a little bit longer in Peru. But the community itself, I think, they're very sophisticated, and they are in a jurisdiction very close to Arequipa and Cerro Verde and all the other big copper projects in southern Peru. So they understand the mining business very well.
Okay. So what does that mean, that timeline, though? Is like, what are they looking for? Just involvement? You said consultation. What does that look like on the ground?
Yeah, well, you have to sort of have the government involved, and really it's just a timing issue. Like, the government are doing this for a lot of different projects. They have a limited resources, so you have to sort of schedule things that take longer than we can't really go into the community directly. We have to go through the government, and the government sort of helps negotiate on their behalf as an indigenous community kind of thing, right? So it just takes longer, but we haven't seen anything in the way of roadblocks or potential roadblocks coming into that.
Yeah.
And
Literally and physically and all that.
Exactly.
With COVID, of course, have you traveled lately? Have you been to Peru as of late?
I was down there. Last time I was down there was before I took on the interim CEO role in late August, early September.
Oh, okay, so not too long ago.
Not too long ago.
Okay.
They were in the process of drilling the Elliott project at the time.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Let's talk projects. You mentioned Elita. Shall we start there?
Sure.
Yeah.
We got a lot going on. So.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, Elita and Florida Cobre, where you just announced the start of drilling as well. So let's start with Elita, because you drilled there just recently. You mentioned you've been to the drill. Run us through it, and what did you drill? What were some of the results? I think there was one very nice 900-meter hole that you put out.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if we'll ever mine down to 900 meters, but we just wanted to show continuity of grade and mineralization, in the system, and it's a big system. Elliott itself, as I mentioned, was discovered by Globe Trotters, and sort of neat, really, in that it was probably the first Eocene age porphyry system discovered in Peru. So how this works is all these porphyries occur in the roots of volcanoes, so they form in these volcanic arcs or volcanic chains, But they form down about 3 to 5 kilometers usually, so you have to basically have them exposed long enough so that they erode down to where the porphyry is exposed. So the Eocene porphyries that you see, you don't see, well, it's the first one we've seen in Peru, but all of the big deposits in Chile, or a lot of them, say, for example, Chiquicamata and Escondida, and those are Eocene in age. So that arc sort of comes up and then it disappears in Peru, and people thought it just sort of pinched out kind of thing, but we're actually seeing that arc continues through Peru. So it generates a lot of interest in the sense of, like, it's an unexplored volcanic chain for potential new discoveries. But the project itself, we drilled about 4,500 meters. Lundin had done about close to 10,000 meters initially before handing it back to the Globetrotters. So what we wanted to do is get in and sort of validate the work that they had done and continue to expand on this resource base in this Target 1 area. The system itself is very large. It's about 2K by 2K in size, made up of 5 different targets. We've only really tested Target 1 yet, and we're hoping to get sort of an initial resource estimate out. The range of what we're looking for is somewhere between 250 and 500 million tons of probably 0.5% or greater copper equivalent, down to about 400 meters. So it's not a small project, it's fairly sizable.
It sounds like it, yeah. So, and mineralization starts right at surface, I'm assuming.
All 30 meters of unconsolidated colluvium, and then you're right into 0.5% copper on surface.
Yeah, fantastic. I just have a map here, so I'm just looking at that as well. And you've only drilled Target 1 so far?
We have. I mean, when Lundin got in, they're actually using a hand-portable rig, so they were only really able to access one small area at the time.
Just scratching the surface with a toothpick.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. You've drilled only 4,500 meters roughly.
Yeah.
Why such a small amount? Like, I have to ask, like, I want to see scale personally, right? It's like, I want to see the 450,000 meter programs, right? To add a couple of zeros. So run us through it, like the targeting as part of that as well, please.
Yeah, so essentially what we wanted to do is start getting resources on the books. This is a huge system. We're going to be drilling there for a couple of years yet, and we have this sort of mantra where we would like to measure twice and cut once kind of thing, right? So we don't want to go in and just drill and really not have a real focused program. We had an objective we wanted to achieve, and we sort of did that, and we were able to do it with about close to 5,000 meters.
No, fair enough. It's good to have a business plan, right? And I keep looking at the Great Bear analog, for example. Like, they vehemently didn't want to put out a resource because it cap our upside, because we'd be put in a box probably. And is that something you're afraid of as well? Like, let's say you come out with 250, or even let's say 230. Okay, let's be pessimistic here. Okay. Like, and you mentioned just 250, 500, and then you come out with 230. Investors going to put you in a penalty box, right?
Possibly.
So now the motivation is like, why put out a resource when you know you can drill for like 5 more years easily without even like having to drill the same target twice?
I think I mean, we look at it from a valuation perspective. I mean, not being able to sort of tell the world the scale of what we're looking at here it makes it harder for them to sort of conceptualize what we're doing.
Yeah.
Just being able to say that we have like one of 5 targets, and in that area, just down to 400 meters, we can put together like a 500 million tons of copper. Loads of room to expand, but we sort of make people aware that it's just a start, and we can continue to grow this. Every time we go in and drill, we're going to add resources to the books. I don't think there's a problem with that.
Oh, of course not. No, there are different approaches to like, what do you call it? Different ways to peel an egg or something like that. Like there are more ways than one. One question is, who do you think your audience though is? Your marketing, like you're putting the resource out for, like. Because in the end, Great Bear was pretty much an institutionally held story. I have yet to hear a story from somebody who owned Great Bear at 30 cents and sold at 28, whatever it is. Kinross is paying for, right? So I don't think I've seen that out there. It's not like the Bitcoin billionaires out there now saying, well, I bought it $1 and now we're at 65,000, whatever it is. It's 42, I think. But you catch my drift. So who's your audience?
That's a good question. I mean, we haven't done a lot of work on we haven't really had enough work done to really get good analyst coverage and things. But the way we're looking at moving our projects, at least certainly Florida Cobre project, which has a historical resource on it. We're currently drilling. We want to move that towards production, and make it a production decision as soon as we can. And we think there is an opportunity there. We think it could be economic at these prices for sure. And then at the same time, we're trying to build our resource base, right? So we're trying to get to like 4 million tons of contained copper, which is close to like a 1 billion ton ore body kind of thing, or multiple bodies put together. So, we don't really, I mean, I don't really know how to answer that exactly, but I would say that, we'd like to see institutional investors become a big part of it. We're marketing in the US a fair bit, and in Europe as well, where we know there's some pretty sophisticated investors. So we're trying to build that sort of, investor base.
So as a follow-up to that, and I hate putting you on the spot there, but is our joint ventures like part of the strategy? Is that an option for you as well, or even bending out the projects like at some point? Like that's what I mean by audience, maybe the majors, anybody else who'd be interested like in a 19.9 joint venture as well. Is that part of the game plan as well?
No, not at all. I think from our perspective, we don't really see that as being a good business strategy. Waiting for the majors to come and get sold to them. What we want to do, like most copper companies, really start by having these sort of cheaper to produce enrichment blankets, sort of similar to Candelaria, where you go in and you can put that into production for say $200 million, start to generate cash flow. And mine that, and while you're doing that, you're basically drilling off your other resource base to hopefully be able to get to a decision to be able to put in like a flotation circuit to continue to expand and grow the company into a medium tier producer kind of thing, or at least large enough that you can raise the capital to put something like that into production. So, for example, looking at Elida, we own the ground outright. It doesn't cost anything to hold it, $3 a hectare, I think, and so we're not in a hurry to go in and really, drill the crap out of it kind of thing. We want to be able to sort of take our time and really focus our drilling into, incrementally just increasing the resource base as we go. And if we continue to de-risk these assets and a company comes along and they're interested in buying us, and
and Bob's your uncle, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic. No, okay, let's wrap it up on Elida. Like, what are the plans for 2022 here? You mentioned resource definition, like somewhere drilling happening as well.
So we're going to do. We've already started metallurgical work, so we're actually starting to put together the initial resource estimate, and we were looking to get a 43-101 report out on that, hopefully by Q3 of this year. And then once we finish our Florida Cobre drilling, which we're actively doing now, we're looking to get back into Elida to do a phase 2 program where we're going to continue to sort of define resources around the target 1 area, but also look at expanding on 2 other targets in that sort of center, right, that cluster. So that'll be sort of the main objective for Elida for the.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, one slide I really like in your presentation, actually, you have timelines in there. Big fan of that personally, like where you actually show, okay, this is the plan, this is what we're doing this year. It doesn't say the number here on my cheat sheet, but a personal favorite of these slides. So something I always look forward to, because you can track as well. Like you can put check marks on, you can track the progress, and it keeps you accountable, right?
A little bit. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, Elita wrapped up. Well, you started drilling Florida Cobra. So we got to talk about this, and we're already 25 minutes into the conversation. So let's talk about it.
Fantastic project. Yeah. I mean, it's right in elephant country. It's about 26 kilometers from Cerro Verde, which is like the largest copper mine in all of Peru. And we're also about 5 to 6K from another mine, which is on care and maintenance, but owned by Nexa, called Chappie. So we're right in that corridor. So like we're an hour and a half drive from Arequipa, and you can drive right to the main center part of the system, right? And so the drill is essentially set up right next to camp. And what we're doing is with that historical resource, it was done back in the 90s, so it doesn't meet any sort of standards, So we have to go in and validate about 9 holes and get that to an initial resource estimate that we can report. But at the same time, a lot of these enrichment blankets, which are leachable, sit on top of the bigger porphyry itself. So what we're planning, like for example, if you look at Cerro Verde, I think they report, not everywhere, but you see reports that it has about 4.5 billion tons of copper at about 0.5% or 0.4 copper, right? So about 200 million tons of that probably make up the enrichment blanket, and then the remaining 4+ billion is within the primary below. What we want to do is we want to go in and validate that enrichment blanket, but also drill deeper into the primary.
Of the drill program you're running right now, how much of that is just the 9 holes? Is that twinning? Like
they're
validating
twinning
the holes? It's just twinning the hole
and going deeper, testing the deeper part of the system. So we're looking to drill out over 500 meters to be able to sort of start putting together a primary copper resource.
And those are the first holes you're drilling right now? Is that the first part to get that out of the way and then continue on? Wildcat drilling, anything like that happening, or is just really known target drilling and just...
Well, we don't see the resource itself that's already the historical resource expanding much, but we're looking to just drill deeper, and that's really where the Wildcat is. I mean, you can, a lot of these projects, for example, the big mining companies get into these big porphyry systems, and they only drill off what they need to. I mean, they're like generational projects, right? So we're going to drill down to probably 500 to 700 meters underneath the enrichment blanket, and if the system continues to produce, then we'll continue to expand.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I feel like we're neglecting Florida Cobra here. Like, run us a bit through the timeline for the project. Like, you're drilling now. How many meters again? Remind. I have 4,500 meters in mind as well.
Well, we've only said that we're drilling 3,700.
That's what. Okay.
That's all we need to do the program. But if we start getting good results, we're going to continue to expand that program.
And then next steps, like verifying resource, obviously. When do you expect that to happen? Like, how long is the program planned for?
Yeah, so it's going to be about a 4-month program, and then we'll end up putting together an initial resource estimate on that, which we hopefully will be done before the end of the year, and then we're going to look at deciding whether we move it towards a PEA. We're going to be doing met work on the project pretty much as soon as we can while the core is fresh, looking at like sequential analysis to be able to see what the solubilities are like for the different minerals, things like that. Right?
How long's the turnaround time on met results? I think bottle roll or fire assays are usually like longer. Column testing. Sorry, column testing is usually 6 months, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, we've sort of laid out about 4 to 5 months, but it could be a bit longer.
Yeah, sounds about. Yeah, okay. Yeah. And then resource estimate. What is it now? It's February, mid-August. So September, early September, might make sense for a resource.
Probably be a little bit later in the year.
Okay.
Yeah. Probably close to the end of the year.
Yeah. So you started drilling now? One drill, that is, or two?
Yeah, one drill so far. Yeah, it's a pretty tight sort of program, right? I mean, the holes are not that far apart, and there's already historical infrastructure there, like roads and things, so to get into these locations. So,
I do have to follow up because it seems like I ask everybody that, like lab turnaround times. Like, have you had conversations with the labs, or
Absolutely.
Like how are you mitigating that lab turnaround risk?
We have a 3-week turnaround.
Okay.
So
that's in the contract, or is that actually in real life?
No, in real life, absolutely. Okay. No, Peru's really good that way, and we have a really good relationship with the lab. We've been using them for quite a long time. So, we've been consistently, for Elida at least, consistently getting about 3-week turnaround.
Oh,
on our
fantastic.
results.
Yeah, because that's a conversation that popped up here during Roundup last week as well. Like, how are companies mitigating the lap risk? Like,
Three months plus turnaround.
It's crazy. But I saw a line, or I heard some feedback that there's a prep facility, a company that offers prep work on site, or sells you prep labs on site. Apparently, there's quite a bit of demand for that, and people are looking into that just to cut the turnaround time for that. Right?
I don't know how you can plan a program where you're waiting like 3 to 4 months to get results back.
It's impossible.
Yeah, it's
right?
impossible.
It's especially when you have a 4-month season.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's brutal. So let's wrap this up then. We talked about Elita with Flor de Cobre. Driller results, I'm assuming, will be the next catalyst or news items coming out.
Yeah. No, we're definitely looking. We're validating holes, and like the first hole into the program is K008, which is drilled back in the 90s. It had 272 meters of 0.92 copper, and 114 meters of that, I think, was about 1.4% copper is enrichment, and the 160 meters is enrichment, and 156 meters of 0.58 as a primary. We're just going to, if the primary sulfides continue, we're just going to continue to drill that hole, and it really tests that primary or hypogene.
Well, you gave us the blueprint what to look for, right? So pressure's on.
There's So I mean, it's not like we're drilling a new hole. It's we're just validating. So the results we expect to be quite good for that hole.
Awesome. Well, you're financed, cash on hand, drilling is happening, so it should be quite exciting season. I've seen you ramp up marketing a little bit as well. I've seen you out a little more vocal out there.
More,
fantastic. Get some more eyeballs on it.
Hoping to get some analyst coverage if we can in the next little while as well. See what happens.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, Richard, I really appreciate you coming to the office. Coming into the studio here. It's, you might have noticed, we're 32 minutes in. It just makes it such a better conversation having you sitting right in front of me instead of just here on a screen. So,
I was told it's going to be 8 minutes or so, but
that's the breaking news special. We usually do 20. We aim for 20. We're sitting at 32, but I think we covered all the ground. So I think, and in person is just easier to engage.
It's been great.
On screen, so.
We really like telling the stories, so we're pretty happy with what we've done so far.
Appreciate you coming on, and everybody else. And change the camera. There we go. Thanks for joining us, SF Live. This was episode 237. Make sure to give this video a like if you liked it. If you liked the conversation, leave a comment. What do you think of the company? What do you think of the conversation? Anything we forgot to ask, put that in the comments. I'm sure Richard will take a look at it. I'll take a look at the comments as well and see if I can answer anything, or if I reach out to the company to get some more feedback. And that's it for today. We'll be back with more live content. If you haven't done so, check out our SF Live on-site trailer that we just put out this morning as well. We've been to Maritime Resources. Full video premiere is happening this Thursday at 9 a.m. PST, so make sure to join us for that. And leave a comment, leave a